Okay, so part B is asking you to complete the is Latin method. And in doing so, you're going to have to make use of these two helper methods, which is has all values, which returns a Boolean, and contains duplicate, which returns a Boolean. And it's actually part of the instructions that you have to use them to receive full credit for this problem. So it says, write the static method is Latin, which will return true if a given two-dimensional square array is Latin square and otherwise returns false. A two-dimensional square array of integers is a Latin square if the following conditions are true. So they all have to be true. The first row has no duplicates. All values in the first row of the square appear in each row of the square, and all values in the first row of the square appear in each column of the square. So here's an example of Latin squares. So the first row has no duplicates. All values in the first row appear in each row of the square. So that means I've got 1, 2, and 3, and if I search all the other rows, 1, 2, and 3 appear in all the rows. All values in the first row of the square appear in each column of the square. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So this is a Latin square. This one is not a Latin square because the first row contains duplicates. This one's not a Latin square because the elements of the first row do not all appear in the third row. So 1, 2, 3 don't appear in row 3. And then this one's not a Latin square because the elements of the first row do not appear in every column. So I would be expecting to see 1, 2. Over there on the pile, honey, there's a pile right there. Excuse me. The array tester class provides two helper methods, contains duplicates, and has all values. The method contains duplicates return true if the given one-dimensional array contains any duplicate values and false otherwise. The method has all values returns true if and only if every value in array 1 appears in array 2. You do not need to write the code for these methods, so they're expecting you to be able to read that information and use it. And it's very specific. You must use get column. So that's what you coded in part A. So the assumption here is even if it's wrong, you assume that you did it right. So you are going to make use of the fact that you have get column available to you, you have has all values, and you have contains duplicates. So this one's going to be a lot longer, okay? So we're going to do this in terms of when we write this, we're basically going to check for all the reasons it wouldn't be a Latin square. And if it's not any of those, then by default, it will be a Latin square. Okay, so we're just going to go one at a time. So the first thing we're going to check to see if it has any duplicate values. So all we have to do is write an if statement and say, if contains duplicates, in row, and we're only curious about row 1, according to the information that we've been given on the previous page. The first row has no duplicates, so that's all we care about. So we only have to check the first row, which is referenced by 0, and you are sent a reference to a two-dimensional array. So if there are duplicates, then we have to return false because then it is not a Latin square. Then let's go on to check and see if it has, let's go on and check the next condition. Okay, so we're going to write a for loop, which is, so we're checking if all values in the first row appear in each row of the square. Okay, so if that doesn't happen, then that means it's not a Latin square. So we're actually going to start at row 1 because we're comparing all the other rows to row 0. Okay, so we're going to write a loop, and R is going to represent the row number. Okay. So if it were a Latin square, we would say something like this. If it has all the values, so here we are using the second helper method. So we're going to be comparing everything to the first row, which is row 0, and we want to compare it against all other rows. So this is going to be referenced by saying square R. So if this is not true, that means it's not a Latin square. So we're going to say return false. And then finally, all values in the first row appear in each column of the square. So this is where we're going to be most likely using get column. So this one's a little more complicated. So again, this time we're going to loop through all the rows. So we're going to say int c equals 0. C is less than square of 0 dot length. Even though this is a square matrix, I'm going to do this the proper way, accessing the number of columns. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit longer expression. So we're going to say has all values. And remember, we just have to send it. We're checking the first row, so that's going to be square of 0 with each column. So that one, we're going to use get column. And we need to cycle through all of the columns. So we're going to refer to the two-dimensional matrix, and C is going to loop through all the column numbers. So now if this isn't true, we're going to return a false. Okay, so if we don't return false here, if we don't return false here, and if we don't return false here, then it must be a Latin matrix. So at the very end, we have to add return true. Thank you.